that stuck with me so much because I remember just feeling immense guilt about that. And, yeah.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. Like, do you write about anything else? I'm like, not really.
And there's that. You find your niche and you like kill it till it's can't be killed anymore, which is never because it can continue being beaten every single time. I mean, hey, as long as you find other angles, you're golden.
No, exactly. And I feel like it's just this wealthy font of material.
For sure. Because as you age, the memories change. So, like, there's just even that alone.
Yeah.
I'm excited and terrified to read my Midnight Mass poem. One of them.
Some of these are like brand new. And so I'm like, oh.
I understand. I had to look up how to say the word corporeal because I was not saying it right this whole time in my head. Made me feel bad. I kept wanting to say corporeal.
It happens.
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to check on the YouTube app and see how many people are watching us on YouTube.
Sounds
Because
good.
if we're not speaking to an empty room, then we can start. Oh, there are people watching us on YouTube. Awesome. On the
Ooh.
YouTube app. See how many people are watching us on YouTube. I'm just going to wait for the delay to be over and then we can start.
Cool. Yes, I have. I'm so sorry, Kat. I literally just can't speak. That's all. I don't know how to talk. I'm sorry.
All right. I think we're good to go. Yael's going to be hopping into voice chat in a second to listen as well, and we've got some YouTube viewers. So, hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Nat Raum. I'm the editor-in-chief of Fifth Wheel Press, which this is technically my personal server, but this is sort of just how we are organizing this and having this all go down is through this server, and I'm kind of envisioning it to be a space for sort of like our broader audience to hang out online and chat. So tonight we have got myself reading. We have got Rachael Crosbie, who has got our upcoming chapbook, Trick Mirror or Your Computer Screen, and also recently released Bad Poems, which is another fantastic self-published chap, and that you can get in a super bundle deal if you give Rachel via email or DM proof of purchase of Trick Mirror from Fifth Wheel Press. And just a reminder, again, that's available for pre-order pretty much up until our Valentine's Day release. So get on it. And our final reader is also within the literary community, sort of someone I'm familiar with and have really enjoyed getting to know kind of over the last couple of weeks through various other projects that we've been working on, is Perry Gasteiger. Who recently released Meditations for the Dead and Dying, which I actually have yet to get my hands on, but I've heard it is absolutely amazing. And then I got distracted in the middle of talking about how amazing Rachel's chapbook was, and I forgot to plug all of the other amazing things that they have done lately, which includes the Midnight Mass anthology, and their magazine, The Winnow, also has their pop culture issue submission call open until February 10th. So lots and lots of opportunities going on. And so if you are new to us as a space, we are a dedicated literary and art publishing space for queer, trans, and gender non-conforming creatives. I'm so sorry. I've been in a car all day and my English is really just struggling at this moment in time. We publish things like photography monographs, art zines, chapbooks, anthologies, plans to expand offerings in the future. And internally, sort of recently, we're gearing up for the release of Hazy, which is our annual photography group zine. Our Flux anthology is going to be coming out next week. Rachel has 2 pieces in this anth, and it's got also so many other amazing contributors. I cannot wait to bring you all this anthology next week. And this morning, we reopened pre-orders for Chantal Kim's photography monograph, When the Wind Blew and the Time Stopped, which is coming out in April of this year. And last reminder, we are always open for submissions for the Yours portion of our web store. And so that's basically just a self-published database for self-published books that kind of fall within our represented communities, sold directly by creators. And submissions to that are always free, and there's basically more info on all of this is on our site, and I will drop the link in the chat right now for those of you that are watching on YouTube. That's just the quick links at the bottom of our website. Awesome. So for the reason that we are all here, I am pleased to start the second reading of our digital reading series. So we started doing these readings in conjunction with our expansion into literature in 2021 and have been featuring readers from our 2022 chapbook series, other friends, contributors of the press. And we're also envisioning this Discord space, as I said, as kind of a safe social space for our community to connect on creative and beyond levels. Like we're always kind of looking for suggestions to bring the space to life, events, etc. We're really hoping to make this into kind of a community. So as mentioned, our featured reader tonight is Rachael Crosbie, and their chapbook, Trick Mirror or Your Computer Screen, is available for pre-order from Fifth Wheel Press now. Releases on February 14th. And we're also going to be having a virtual release party for that, so stay tuned for more info on that. And I guess I feel like I usually start these out and kind of turn things over to our guest and featured readers after that. So I will dive right into my packet and turn the floor over. I'm giving content warnings individually before each poem, along with like a little bit of information about the poem. I mean, no stress or anything if you feel the need to step out or deafen or anything to avoid a subject that might be triggering or sensitive to you. So the first poem I'm reading is from my most recently released chapbook, which I still kind of can't believe. It came out less than a month ago, and I'm still just like, how is that less than a month ago? There's just been so much time since then. But basically, this was the first poem I wrote for the chapbook last summer. I basically wrote it, like, I had some mental health stuff going on, and I basically wrote it, like, at the very end of kind of dealing with all of that. And it was, like, the first thing I'd written in forever. It felt amazing. And it is based on a town in Pennsylvania that is basically known as a ghost town now and, like, scheduled to be completely depopulated by the end of this decade because there's, like, a mine fire burning beneath of it, and it's really unsafe to be there. So I got kind of thinking about this, like, weird town in Pennsylvania. And yeah, Rachel's in the chat, like, I know which one you're talking about. I'm like, yep. It's those mid-Atlantic things. So this was previously published in Eclipse Zine and in my most recent chapbook, both kind of toward the end of December, right on top of the other. And content warnings for this one are death, fire, and implied suicidal ideation. Oddfellows Cemetery. My body is a bumper car in that I am destined to crash. like racing steam trains into ghost towns in the mountains, yearning to run, not walk, into the smoky ether. Right before the floor drops out, there's this part where the room is engulfed in flames, and I don't remember a bit of it after that, but it's been 15 years since I went on a thrill ride, and I'm still overcome by that vertigo twice a week at least. Back then I couldn't scream loud enough, but I lost my voice that day, and I think it's still somewhere in the shaft. Anthracite mines burn in my hollows, deep, dark space that can't help but breathe, preferring to smother instead, still kept aflame by just a thread of continued breath tunneling beneath me. It seemed okay on the surface, but below the lithosphere there is always something lying in wait. I can bet on it. So moving right on through the prep school program, poems into what I'm sort of the newer stuff that I'm reading tonight. I've got one more from the chap. I haven't read this one, and it is forthcoming with Death's Dormant Daughter, and they're actually open for submissions surrounding death, grief, and queer perspectives on both of those topics until the 31st of January. And so this one, the title comes from the second to last quest of the Witcher 3 Hearts of Stone expansion, which is like a kind of pivotal personal like story arc to me. And then this is in my debut chapbook, and again at forthcoming in Death's Dormant Daughter. And content warnings for this one are implied sexual assault and abuse. Scenes from a marriage. Winter is for mourning, for sprinting and skulking down Lake Avenue. Green wool kilts and backpack tucked under sweats. In fantasies, our trysts were kissed by dappled afternoon light through magnolia leaves. Pinprick lens flares shining off curls imbued with the delectable top notes of argan oil. I care a great deal for westward-facing windows and the way they frame berry cobbler in cream skies each evening at 4:30 as the last week of fall bleeds into the gray of solstice. In the threads of what is left inside my head of you and me, any cry of pleasure has been dubbed over with the low groans of yaller horns, sounded to the seas as the pyres of lovers and martyrs drift quietly toward the horizon. December's first double digits spread scapular muscles taut in remembrance. The absolute truth of hindsight shows me why my body holds grudges I don't remember. 10-second video clips where my limbs are whorish putty kneaded in curious fingers, then covetous hands. Fine-grained photographs are clear as mud. Were I to stand again on any inch of that scrap of West Melrose, especially the patches where fallen black walnuts stain the pavement in perpetuity as trees lay themselves bare, I lack the knowledge or willpower to weep for you beyond an earthward glance. I know the weight can do something, but it never means anything. Right. And so low-key, part of the reason that I plugged Midnight Mass was because I really wanted to read this one that was recently published in the Midnight Mass Anthology. I told you all I'm so struggling with forming proper sentences today. So this was recently published in... Hey! All right. Anyway, so the last stanza of this one's been hitting me pretty hard for a minute lately. Parts of it have been kind of floating around since I started writing again, and I'm just kind of glad to have seen it all come together, and it feels very timely right now. And so contents for this one are body horror and implied abuse. The Exorcism of Nat Rom. That's my notes, sorry. I long for the day my head spins 360 degrees around. Almost like the way Brian Sella said, break your neck and I will love you. Instead, I'll just forget about you. I've had dreams we lived in this house unfurnished. The lights are never on and it's almost always raining outside. Steam engines blow whistles in the distance, but the tracks out back sink deeper into a shroud of earth and fiddlehead ferns. Like memory fades, do things pixelate over time? The roots ran deep, come April like crocuses poking through broken soil, nourished by acid rain, rotting out and falling down. It's funny the ways we talked each other into this. Elsewhere the Jones Falls babbles. I follow rivers, but I also torch bridges. Please don't sit near me. I go numb when I'm alone, and I never want company, but I always want company. In the dark we exist in the void. Glassy smooth, tide pools teeming, waiting to drown again. Come daylight, it's a bit more complicated. And so the next two that I'm going to be reading are from my miniature drum roll. Just going to... my full-length collection that is going to be coming out in July. So I can't say much more than that right now, but I do have a full-length hybrid collection coming out in July, and these are some of the first poems from it. So I've been having a lot of fun with them recently. I've been doing a lot of writing in a vacuum, and very few people have seen these because I've been out of school for the semester, or for the winter break, I guess. So this first one is kind of about my first real bartending job. We served a seasonal summer white sangria, and it was like the most disgusting thing on the planet. It was just like sticky and sweet, and like inevitably you spilled it all over the floor. It was disgusting. But people would ask for it as soon as it got warm enough to sit outside. And so it was just this really weird kind of like interplay of like, okay, this stuff is gross, but everybody is obsessed with it. And so this is currently unpublished, forthcoming in that full length, as I mentioned. And content warnings include alcohol use, coercion, sex, and blood mentions. White sangria. I learned the rules of fermentation in the summertime while paddle stirring the honeydew, cantaloupe, pineapple, green apple, dissolving into buckets of white wine and peach schnapps. We deemed it sludge fit only for dish pit sink drains after 5 or 6 days dragged in and out of heat. One August night, I snapped the neck of a flower vase pitcher pouring sangria into glasses tableside. Come Memorial Day, requests trickled then flooded for this light gold peach melon nectar. And as Baltimore July drifted in with the horseflies, I poured bucket after bucket into the grates once everyone remembered this was the wrong kind of sweet. This was the cloying venom that stowed away under tongues to be drawn out of crevices later, when the sun goes down and the neons peppering the orange-cast streets shine lights paint age on my face. The night I snapped the pitcher neck, I didn't bleed just then, but later and from elsewhere besides my hands. Tucked into a dim red corner bathroom stall pressed into a stranger's body, I became the aqua vita. I became the sweating vase of chablis and fruit, satin on palates and sugar sticking to hands. After 10 minutes, I am sink drain sludge. I am the wrong kind of sweet. And so last one from me is from the same collection. There's like a little bit of a backstory behind this, but it's kind of long, and we did already kind of get started a little bit late, so I'm going to abbreviate the backstory to say that basically, like, I had a lot of metaphors in my very early 20s for my depression, like, within my life, and one of them was that when I was too depressed to do laundry, I would just go out and buy a new set of sheets, and I amassed a collection of sheets that have since been referred to as my depression sheets, basically. And content warning for this one for suicidal ideation. Rachel's, like, typing because they've already heard this one. Earlier this week, I sent it to them. Anyway, okay. Depression sheets. There comes a point of sleeping on cheap cotton smeared with pipe ash when your sheets pill beyond recognition. Satin turned to thread pebbles scratching against cracked heels. You wake up at noon on a Thursday and catch a whiff of the oxidized Fino sherry on your nightstand and decide to drive north. You listen to the rhythmic click of shopping cart wheels push down fluorescent aisles done up in red signage you've never actually read. Your rituals always bite their tails, swing back and forth like your hands flicked a pendulum, reaching for full-size sheets and driving 20 minutes south back to strip the mattress, climbing in after a midnight bath with shaved legs on crisp cloth, shoving the cast-offs into that drawer. There will come a day when you bring home another new velvet quilt to lay over pilled sheets and unshaven legs. You will open the drawer again and count 5 flats and 5 fitteds and 10 pillowcases. You will give each set a name and feel yourself tangle and choke in their aura. You will never buy pattern sheets again. Right, that does it for me. So, seeing as how we're probably going to want to finish up with Rachel, I'll turn it over to Perry.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you for reading all of those. Those were wonderful. I just want to double check. My airspace is what, 15 minutes, you said?
10-15, like kind of just,
10?
yeah.
All right, let's do this. Okay. The first couple of things that I'm going to read, well, first of all, just before I get started, I'm going to content warning this entire packet with body horror. There's going to be a decent amount of blood. Yes, blood, always blood. And it can be a little bit intense at times, so please feel free to take care of your mental space as we go through it. Some of these can be a little bit grating sometimes. If there's anything especially to look out for, I will content warning beforehand, but just in general, take your space if you need it. So the first two that I'm going to read are from my debut chapbook, Meditations for the Dead and Dying. I'm not really good at the pre-poem banter, so I'm just going to go ahead and read through these things. The first one we've got is Apricots. She sinks her teeth into a tender apricot. Sticky, sweet juice drips down her chin like rushing waterfalls pouring into the crevices of her skin, gathering in lakes and rivers, sugared and thick with syrupy kisses and honey-soaked bodies. She tears at bruised flesh, watching bit by bit devoured by glistening lips, longing for more, to rip from the pit that supple thing which finds its bed in the suffering of tender fruit sucked dry, left husked and spent in the palms of indulgent hands. She carefully places the stone in my open mouth, seals it with a kiss, and watches roots grow from my toes, branches crack my ribs, a canopy burst from my crown in beautiful becoming, blooming with tender violence. She sits beneath the shade of my leaves, my boughs heavy with unclaimed fruits, waiting for her starving mouth. She cannot resist the smell of fresh nectar. Licking her lips, she reaches up and plucks another tender apricot. And the second one I'll do from Meditations. Meditations is a pretty short collection, so I'm only going to do two from it. I want to keep some air of mystery. But this is one of my favorite ones I think I've ever written. Content warning for like especially bloody. Yeah, this is called New Leaves. I love new leaves, and the smell of blood as life tumbles forward, tearing into the world from heaving wombs, umbilical cords wrapped around slender necks as young lungs struggle to take their first breath. And cherry blossoms opening in fragrant spring, impatient heads crowning through fragile buds, bursting forth in brutal inception, thin seals wrenched open with ignorant disregard. And red stains upon pink skin, tender and screaming as fresh air rakes its nails along naked nerves. The remnants of a torn vessel cling to raw flesh, glistening in the carnage left in the wake of creation. And sweet sap bleeding through cracked bark, flowing free through valleys gouged into faces of unwavering trunks, splitting as new growth forces its way into the world, green and sticky. And the violence and beauty of becoming, witnessing the sight of a child ripped from the stomach of its mother, leaving her stretched and hollow and bloody. There really is nothing more stunning than new leaves. The next couple I'm going to do are from a new chapbook that I just finished up, actually with Rachel's help. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel does some amazing editing services. If anybody needs any work on their collections, she's absolutely wonderful. So this is from a collection called How to Love When the Sky is Falling. It talks about love and relationships and how they can get a little bit messed up sometimes. So the first one I'm going to read from that is called Anthomania. Flowers are dangerous things to love. Held close to beating hearts, plucked bodies wither with the heat of devotion. Her fingers run along my goosebump spine, holding petals between tender lips. She whispers angel breath lullabies, stories woven into the strands of my hair. She kneels in front of me, resting her head in my lap, and I quiver with the weight of her breath. A garden tumbles from her mouth when she says my name, and I find myself treading on beds of forget-me-nots. If you love, love softly, for nothing stings, quite like crushed flowers. And the second one I'll do from that is called I Love the Way You Look in the Sunshine. Before I knew how tender the color blue could be, I threw myself against asphalt, put my head through walls and stuck pins in my eyes. Before I unlearned how to clothe myself, lay bare to the world, I ripped skin on rusted nails, pushed splinters into bleeding palms and shattered ribs, screaming hateful words into the night. Before the unfolding of myself, like the peeling back of trembling fingers, I knew nothing. I feel tears kiss my face at the openness of blue skies and wonder at the kindness of undoing. I have two other pieces, works that I have in progress right now that I'm going to read a couple things from. This first one is an Untitled Chapbook about my hometown. My hometown is a mining town up in northern Ontario. And the one I want to read from that is when I was a kid, I was in a new development area, and it was a pretty nice part of town. And but the houses were built on bedrock, so there was like literal like dynamite sirens going off in the neighborhood, and people like blasting out the rock with dynamite. So this was kind of inspired by that experience. It's called Foundations. When I was a child, they blew dynamite into the rock beds, leaving gaping holes in the ground. I was wild once, she screamed as we ripped into her stomach. We planted domesticated trees and we manicured green lawns, empty thank yous and pale I'm sorries taking root in the fractures of her bones. When I was still fresh, though not new to the tragedies of life, I learned that stone breathes. It shifts with the inhale and exhale of the earth, causing rifts in the homes we had grown. I found a fracture in the interminable concrete of our basement, and my father sighed. I asked if we should glue it back together, and he replied, the only thing to do is wait, for our world to crumble around us, to fall as all things will. And we waited. For years we watched the inevitable spiderweb its way over our walls. We waited until we heard her call to us. I was wild once, and once again, as the bricks began to fall, one by one, around our ankles. We opened our eyes when the dirt settled, tears mixing with the dust of our lives on burning cheeks, as we stared at the spot where our house once stood, listening to the stones sigh and settle in relief. When I was old and had been emptied by the calloused fingers of the world, I laid on beds of glittering rock. Wrecked and ruined by the hands of men, I remembered our homes stolen, from the belly of the earth, and I cried, salt drying on the stone. And the last one I'll do for this evening is from another collection in progress called Letters to My Mother. I feel like that pretty much encapsulates the chapbook. So just forewarning, I guess this one is content warning for like mourning. And also, my mother is still alive. This is not autobiographical. Everything is good there. I just feel like I need to preface this piece with that. So this is my last one. It's gonna be Leftovers. I eat leftovers on the day after my mother's funeral. I eat them cold from the dish, pull plastic wrap back and dig in with my hands, tomato sauce and mashed potatoes crusting under my fingernails. What is left of a person once they've closed the lid on red lips and a bloodless face displayed for the sympathy of the living? A feeling, an inkling, that your flesh and bones don't quite add up, that you are something less than whole. Songs are sung from mourning ears as the dead lay deaf and happy, while people cry into napkins and paper plates full of lasagna and warm gravy. The horizon screams as the sun sets her hair on fire, and we let ourselves fall apart. In the bloody dawn of waking, I collect the pieces left behind and try to fit them where you used to sit. But the pieces are still sharp, not yet worn to sea glass with our tears, and I find myself back on the kitchen floor, trying to inhale your leftovers. Thank you. And I guess I'll be passing it off to Rachel then.
Yep. Thank you so much, Perry. Those were all amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Rachel, if you're ready, you can hop on in.
Sure. So I will start off by reading a poem from Bad Poems, which is what I shorten the title to all the time, but its full title is Self-Portrait of Poems About Bad Poetry. I always shorten it to Bad Poems because it's a mouthful, and I remember when I first started writing it, I would keep getting the title confused. Um, but yeah, so I will start with a poem from there, and just for a little bit about it, this poem came out with Superfruit magazine about 5 days ago. It's available to read digitally and also ordered for print, and I'm actually going to just plunk all the links that are relevant from tonight's reading, which is the link to Superfruit as well as Midnight Mass. I'm just gonna plunk them all in there. And so for the poem from Bad Poems as well as the one published by Superfruit, it's titled In Which Your Poetry Unlearns How to Swim. And it's a burning hibin, kind of. I mean, like it is in the form, but instead of using fire imagery, I used water imagery throughout. There's quite a few content warnings for this, so I just want to say them now. Content warning for bullying, catfishing, religious trauma, and suggested sexual abuse, as well as difficult relationships overall. So if anybody needs to deafen or step out, please feel free to do so. All right. So again, in which your poetry unlearns how to swim. Thank you so much, Nat, for also plunking that in. Okay. In which your poetry unlearns how to swim. When you're older, you think you'll write about men holding trout by the mouth. You don't swim in waters formed by salt and yellow splotches. Not since your basement flooded in 2004. Lamplight glossed in the reflecting pool, and you drowned in night terrors that sloshed in your throat until you lost your voice. In the morning, you rewound your VHS copy of The Little Mermaid for Blockbuster, and you never watched it again. You don't swim in waters raw and cold and young. Not since you sung online. Bad comments flooding your page made you want to cut out your tongue until someone spoke of how pretty your lips were at 13 years old. Until they were your boyfriend you knew as Bill Cowlitz. Until you found out on the day oozing to a balmy summer, your hands clammy and shot cold and shaking, that they were a catfish who baited you with the kindness of strangers. You don't swim in waters holy and clean and sanitized. Not since you were separated by gender in youth group to read Psalms in a circle, palm to palm, and you thought of her hands. How her touch soothed you, and that scared you to confess. But she told you she'd only kiss you since no one wanted to. And when she said no one, she meant guys. And when she said she'd kiss you, she was joking. Then you remembered in 2005, your childhood friend told you her dad died, waving his obituary in your face to force you to play truth or dare, and you prayed she wouldn't, but she dared you to kiss her metallic wet lips, and when you tried to turn away, you slipped on the waterbed and she held your head up, and when you're older, you don't swim in waters warmed by night terrors, raw and young, flooding your lips, clammy and shot cold and shaking with kindness. You swim in her. She dared you when you tried to turn away and she held your head up. You swim in waters, clammy and flooding with her. You held your head up. All right, so that is one of the poems from Bad Poems. And again, if you pre-order Trick Mirror and you would like to get your hands on a physical copy, I am offering Bad Poems for $3 plus shipping and handling for the print copy, which is a pretty good deal. It was originally priced at $10, so yes. So definitely take up on that if you would like to. And thank you so much, Nat. I would say that this is a good precursor to Trick Mirror. But I was also just thinking about this today, but I really do think mixtapes is also another good precursor to both books, to Bad Poems and Trick Mirror, because there's a lot of similarities with all three books, and they all kind of fit in the same universe. And anyway, I do want to take a quick step back, and like Nat, I want to read a poem I wrote for Midnight Mass, and this one's a bit of a doozy, so I do apologize, and I do need to give you content warnings for this one too. The poem is titled A Hymn for After Hours in the Church Parking Lot, and it originally has appeared in Midnight Mass, but it will be again reprinted in Corporeal magazine later on. So I also wanted to say that. And then the content warnings for this poem in Midnight Mass is sexual situation / abuse, religious trauma, hey, it came up again, and dissociation. So also, you don't see this here unless you've clicked on the link, but the form is a little funky. It's kind of looks like music notes, like music lines, sort of. So yeah, there's repeated lines for a reason, which comes up later. So if you hear repetition, that's why. But anyway, A Hymn for After Hours in the Church Parking Lot. Headlights glazed with creamsicle glow, bit on my sweet stained skin as he thumbs pop rocks on my throbbing tongue, and from the throat, phlegm blows like a bubble wand as I suck him clean, delicately for a delicacy. He wants me to look up open-mouthed and begging for his kisses, fluid with pennies iron blood, until it's communion, and he consumes my body and fingers the sign of the cross with lube from a pocket-sized white bottle. And my flesh beats on and on, while midnight glosses from floodlights loud in unison. A summoning that wounds to bone. Woozy sick, I pry the skin from my lips. For the body belongs to me. For the body belongs to dizzying dark in the way it can save me. Headlights glazed with creamsicle glow, and my flesh beats on and on, while midnight glosses from floodlights loud in unison. For the body belongs to me. For the body belongs to dizzying dark in the way it can save me. So that's my fun little midnight mass poem, and I'm glad I took that little venture, because now we are going to go to Trick Mirror or Your Computer Screen. So this book has 2 sections, and I'm going to start with the second section today because the second section picks up exactly where Mixtapes leaves off. It's the same poem, little small changes, but I really wanted to bring this one up because I recently had a review come out today with Stone and Madness Press for Mixtapes, so I thought it would be like a nice little homage to mention Mixtapes, because I kind of was starting to forget about it as we do with our projects. And yeah, so I'm going to start off with Hauntology as navigation. And a little fun fact about this, I thought it was prose the first time I wrote it. It's not prose. The content warning for this one is alcohol. So it's mostly just a mention. It's not like a big thing in the poem. All right, so let me just get it here. All right, and then sorry about that. I'm not good with technology, so I just need to scroll for a sec. But Hauntology as navigation, coming up now. Okay. You wanted a house sliced with hidden rooms, corridors spliced by faint electricity, cool pastels shifting with every movement, memories from an unknown time. Drew would tell you that this was a metaphor for something, that you're using unfamiliar territory as a barrier for what you never want to uncover. Did he ever consider that you were tired of living in an apartment smaller than most trailers, one where each door was visible when you walked in, where you hid from each other, where you can see your entire history from the past 6 months? You never moved in, not when you begged, not when the lease was up and your roommate decided the city was too dangerous to live in. He assured you he wasn't ready for such an undertaking, living so far from school. Then why did he move in with these people, these strangers he'd only known for what felt like a minute? You could only imagine that he must be so used to you that you were something dispensable, boring, or known. Even if things were different and you had the money, he wouldn't move in with you. Not even if you found a house in the country with a landscape of lush nowhere and nighttime visits from raccoons and coyote. He loved animals, even the ones that might be a little rabid, a little too predatory to be loved. He gave his love so easily to everything and everyone else. Late October, you and Drew went to parties. He got drunk on a haze of lights, dancing. He didn't ask you to join. He left you at the bar, and someone else took his seat. He wasn't bothered. He was among friends. You were an accessory that he'd leave at the table and wouldn't think twice if someone swiped it. The music blazed, the ice softened in your glass, and he was dancing with his friends. Kissing them, even. Why didn't you worry then? You went back alone. You navigated the blistering dark, looking behind yourself after every block. Not for him. When you made it to the subway station, the air stitched by cold nights, you waited. You tossed memories into the barren track and listened for the screeching of the 6 train. It rushed by, empty, blurring yellow ground. 20 more minutes to speculate, to readjust, to speculate, to readjust, to mutilate your emotions to where you were torn between yourself and him. And you always chose him. So that was Hauntology as navigation, which the original title was just On Navigation in Mixtapes. So this one appears as that in Trick Mirror. So that starts the second section of Trick Mirror, and I'm going to read the second poem that is in it. It just comes right after Hauntology's navigation, and as Nat has called it, one of their favorite poems of the chapbook, so I wanted to read that one. Hauntology as a voicemail. Your car curves into another summer dusk where heat oozes like an ulcer. The road ahead swells to vertigo. We need to talk, Kel. The setting sun bleeds red ripples in clean light. You pull your visor down, but you sit so close to the wheel that it doesn't make a difference. You're still sunsick. You can't think. You flick on the hazards, soft yellow headlights waiting in the sunken highway. About us, you know. I've been in my own head for a while. The voicemail plays as Drew's words sear into you. You're burning in this skin and you peel your lips and know he won't ever kiss you like that. Night now stains the acid orange sun. It fevers you all the same. Steam streams from the road and fogs up the windshield. Wondering why I haven't felt, why I feel so dulled. Static fills between each fragment. Everything you see and hear is gray and alien. Dark drowns the only visible parts of the highway to a smooth, impenetrable mass. You swallow hard until a lump forms in the back of your throat. You don't deserve it, me like this. And I hope this isn't sudden. I'm sorry. You pass another exit, driving as the hours blear to a filthy pale dawn. The dry and sandy sun scratches you, and that's all you choose to feel as the voicemail plays again and again. So I'm going to read one more poem in this section, and then I'm going to end it off with a poem in the first section. So the next one I'm going to read actually placed recently in a contest. It was in Gut Slut Press's RAR XD contest. And it has content warnings for medical trauma, bullying, self-harm, and vomit. So I wanted to put that out. It also has a reference to Degrassi's Shark in the Water promo. So if y'all know what I'm talking about, yes. But anyway, the title of the poem is Hauntology as a Two-Step WikiHow for Goth Girls. Here you are, in a new room with a graveyard view, puking womb pus yellow. What do you do when sickness shapeshifts your body to a tomb? Too many years wasted lying on church cold floor, bad lighting and bile shimmering on blue tiles. Sterilized by youth, shit-faced by truth. And what do you do when everyone at school claims you are just a goth girl? But this is 2009. We call this emo, which is less cool. And when you're back, they laugh and laugh until it becomes you. Then, what do you do? Step 1. Reimagine camp as your origin story, or Degrassi's Shark in the Water promo. You pass red flags, a path to a carnival, as the cotton-spun sky sugars your skin, cloying pink for them. Was this a holy blessing? You pray you taste good and pay the entry fee with your secrets. Yes, even the ones they force you to swallow, the ones shaped like medicine cherry hard candies, until your whole body is sickeningly sweet and quick to rot. But you tell them your lips taste of salt, and that's why you hurt so fucking much. You can't stop licking your razored wrists. Hey, they painted you with the razor when you had a broken CD case, and those markings were identical to dog scratches. But that isn't drama enough, tears and teen glory enough, and you feared what they could do if you coughed up truths. Why not let them have the you projected by trick mirrors? The other who ripped through your ribs more than once. Is it easier to breathe now? Step 2. Reinvent your look through your search history. How emo are you quiz? Gnashing teeth at night. Is it ghosts? Feel like floating in sleep. Gashed skin reeks like old pennies. Ellie Nash or Haley Williams. How orange can hair be dyed? Does Body Central sell fishnets? Can people on Omegle tell how old you are? What if who you met online is a famous emo? Will that make you popular then? Warnings. You'll grow an unhealthy obsession with Twilight, where you'll ask Wolf Girl to write self-inserted fan fiction together where you're Bella and she's Jacob, and you'll secretly fall in love with how husky her voice sounds when she calls you late in the night, fighting over boys to throw her off your scent. But is it a secret when you tell everyone at church camp, the sick yellow dusk fermenting in your throat when you hard swallow? So I'm going to end the reading with an equally MySpace-themed poem, and this one is in the first section, which is titled Virtual Wild West, and I'm going to be reading, sorry, just scrolling, What's Hot on MySpace Music. And for this one, I do have a couple content warnings for it. It's cyberbullying and death threats. So those aren't like really in-depth, they're just kind of mentioned. But anyway, what's hot on MySpace Music? Pop. Hoarding young crushes, bland and blonde, and bad songs for your bad band. Lines stolen from Avril Lavigne's girlfriend. Did you forget it was your karaoke special when you were 9, and no one would listen, and you sweat from daydreams where you identified as answers from an online quiz about what kind of lover he was, about how soft his touch felt, shoved in a closet, always a closet, for 10 minutes in heaven if it meant the gossip would be true. Rock. They didn't know you when they wrote a sticky drama page about you. Your voice young and impressionable, rung German in the worst American accent. You sang Tokyo Hotel songs unabashedly, a new identity again and again and again. The saddest lyrics clung to you, and they knew, spamming your Ask FM with vague warnings, shaking you with shame, until you were famous for most death threats collected in 7th grade. Alternative. When the scene kids poached outlet malls dressed like Bratz dolls with almond catgirl eyes, malted skin, they teased their hair in bathroom stalls, where you shook a magic 8-ball and asked if you were like them. The answer stuck in grim blue, no matter how many times it loosened, but you knew you weren't. With a cowlick of burnt straight, off-brand Paramore, orange fringe, and the way their glares were curses. When you walked in, musky Hot Topic, its shifting shadows sifting through you. All right, so that's where I'll end it. It's Trick Mirror Your Computer Screen is very like music infused, MySpace infused, very queer trauma concepts like pushing through on e-graveyard. So it's very, I would like to say it's very chaotic, especially in how the forms are. Like I read one that was in the form of a WikiHow poem, a WikiHow article, and I didn't read it, but I have one also in the form of a Wikipedia page. So that one is also really fun and really chaotic. But yeah, so that's Trick Mirror Your Computer Screen. Thank you for coming out tonight and hearing me read, as well as Nat and Perry, who were amazing, and I always love hearing and reading their poetry.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel and Perry, for reading. Thank you to everybody who came out and listened. A little, like, I mean, you always obviously are always concerned when you're like, I'm doing a Saturday night event, but it's like now I feel like it's just so cold and there's so much virus outside that everybody is just inside of their houses. So I'm really excited about how many people came out and joined us tonight. Like I said, we're definitely going to be doing another kind of reading, less formal, but it's kind of still more of a press focused event to celebrate the release of Rachel's chap in February. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, I I'll sign it off unless anybody, if you have any link requests for anything that we discussed that did not get brought up, absolutely please feel free to drop them in the chat and I will drop links. Chat will stay up, so links will also stay up.